The Wall Street Crash of 1929. Part 1. The American Dream Before the Crash. Imagine traveling back in time, nearly 100 years ago. The year is 1920. America has just emerged from the devastation of the First World War. The fighting is finally over. The nation is exhausted. But something extraordinary is about to begin. Across the country, factories roar back to life. Instead of producing weapons, they now manufacture automobiles, radios, refrigerators, household appliances. America is changing faster than ever before. Every week, new buildings rise toward the sky. Busy streets fill with shiny new cars. Electric lights illuminate cities that once fell silent after sunset. For millions of Americans, life has never looked brighter. Historians would later call this incredible decade the Roaring Twenties. It was a time of celebration. Jazz music echoed through crowded dance halls. Movie theaters attracted families every weekend. People believed they were living in the greatest era in American history. Businesses expanded. Factories hired more workers. Wages increased. New opportunities appeared everywhere. For the first time, many ordinary families could afford things their parents had only dreamed about. A brand new car, a radio in the living room, modern furniture, beautiful homes. It seemed as if prosperity would last forever. Newspapers celebrated America's success almost every day. Headlines proudly declared, "The economy has never been stronger. The future has never looked brighter." Confidence spread across the nation. People believed that hard work and smart decisions could make anyone rich. Then, another dream captured America's imagination: the stock market. At first, investing was something only wealthy businessmen understood. They studied companies carefully. They invested patiently. But everything was about to change. By the middle of the 1920s, the stock market became the hottest topic in America. Neighbors talked about it. Newspapers praised it. Radio programs discussed it. Even people with no financial experience began buying stocks. Teachers, factory workers, taxi drivers, farmers, shop owners, young couples. Everyone wanted a chance to become wealthy. Stories of overnight success spread across the country. A man invested a few $100s. Months later, he doubled his money. Another investor earned enough profit to buy a beautiful new home. Every success story inspired thousands more. People believed that stock prices would continue rising forever. Some even borrowed money simply to buy more stocks. Almost nobody asked a dangerous question: what happens if prices stop rising? Because during those exciting years, the answer seemed impossible. America appeared unstoppable. But beneath the excitement, behind every smiling newspaper headline, a silent danger was growing. Stock prices were climbing far faster than the true value of the companies themselves. Greed slowly replaced caution. Confidence replaced common sense. And almost no one realized that the foundation of America's prosperity was beginning to crack. Within a single year, everything would change. Fortunes would disappear. Banks would fail. Families would lose everything they owned. And the greatest financial disaster in American history would begin. Part 2. The Stock Market Fever. The year was now 1928. America had become a nation obsessed with one thing: the stock market. Every morning, before going to work, millions of Americans opened their newspapers, not to read the world news, but to check one thing: stock prices. Had they gone up again? For months, the answer was almost always yes. The market seemed unstoppable. Every week, someone became rich. Every month, new fortunes were created. People began believing that investing in stocks was no longer a risk, it was a guarantee. The excitement spread everywhere, in barbershops, restaurants, factories, train stations, even family dinner tables. Everyone talked about stocks. If someone made money, their friends wanted to know the secret. If someone bought shares in a company, soon everyone else bought them too. It became a national obsession. Wall Street was no longer just a place for wealthy businessmen. It had become the center of America's biggest dream. Ordinary people who had never invested a single dollar before started opening brokerage accounts. Teachers invested, factory workers invested, farmers invested, police officers invested, secretaries invested. Even people with very little savings wanted to become part of the boom. But many had a problem. They didn't have enough money. That's when brokers introduced something dangerous: buying on margin. It sounded simple. You didn't need the full amount to buy stocks. Instead, you borrowed most of the money. Sometimes a person only needed to pay 10%. The rest came from loans. As long as stock prices kept rising, everyone made money. It seemed like a perfect system. People borrowed more, then borrowed even more. No one imagined what would happen if prices suddenly fell. Banks encouraged borrowing. Brokers welcomed new investors every day. Financial newspapers praised the market. Experts confidently predicted that America had entered a new economic era. Some even claimed stock prices would never experience another major crash. People believed them because every prediction seemed to come true. The rich became richer. The middle class felt wealthier than ever. Even those who had borrowed heavily believed they were making smart decisions. Luxury cars became common. New homes were built across America. Expensive clothes, fine restaurants, vacations. People spent money as if prosperity would last forever. But beneath the excitement, a dangerous truth remained hidden. Many stock prices had little connection to the actual value of the companies. Some businesses earned only modest profits, yet their stock prices doubled or even tripled, not because the companies had improved, but because people kept buying. The market was no longer driven by facts. It was driven by emotion, hope, greed, and fear of missing out. A giant financial bubble was quietly growing. Every new investor pushed prices even higher. Every rising price attracted even more investors. It became an endless cycle. But bubbles never last forever. Some experienced bankers quietly began to worry. A few economists issued warnings. They believed the market had become dangerously overheated. But almost nobody listened. Why would they? Everyone around them was making money. The warnings sounded foolish. The profits felt real. America had never seemed stronger. Yet beneath the celebration, the foundation was beginning to crack. And soon, the first warning signs would become impossible to ignore. Part 3. Warning signs nobody believed. By the beginning of 1929, America looked stronger than ever. The stock market was still climbing. New fortunes were being made every day. Newspapers continued to celebrate. Radio hosts spoke confidently about the nation's bright future. To most Americans, everything seemed perfect. But beneath the surface, the economy was beginning to crack, quietly, slowly, and almost invisibly. The first warning came from America's farmers. For years, farmers had produced enormous amounts of wheat, corn, and cotton. During World War I, the demand had been high, but after the war ended, that demand disappeared. Prices collapsed. Thousands of farmers could no longer earn enough money to pay their debts. Many lost their land. Others watched their farms fall into ruin. Yet few people in the cities noticed. Wall Street was still celebrating. Then, factories also began to slow down. Warehouses were filling with products that nobody was buying. Automobiles, household appliances, clothing. Production continued, but sales were beginning to fall. Some companies quietly reduced working hours. Others started laying off employees. Still, stock prices continued to rise. The numbers no longer reflected reality. Companies that earned only modest profits were suddenly worth millions of dollars on paper. Investors weren't buying because businesses were stronger. They were buying because they believed prices would continue climbing forever. This created a dangerous illusion. The higher prices rose, the more confident people became. And the more confident they became, the more they borrowed to buy even more stocks. A few respected economists began speaking out. They warned that the market had become dangerously overvalued. One financial expert compared it to a balloon being filled with too much air. Another warned that endless growth was impossible. But nobody wanted to hear bad news. Why listen to warnings when everyone around you seemed to be getting richer? Bankers dismissed the concerns. Newspapers ignored many of the warnings. Even government leaders remained optimistic. President Herbert Hoover spoke positively about America's future. His confidence reassured millions of people. Investors believed everything was under control. But behind closed doors, some experienced financiers had already become nervous. A handful quietly began selling their stocks. They saw something others refused to see. The market was built on confidence, and confidence can disappear overnight. As summer turned into autumn, small drops in stock prices became more frequent. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make experienced investors uneasy. Still, most people believed these were normal corrections. Nobody imagined they were witnessing the first cracks before disaster. Then, October arrived, and with it, a fear that would soon spread across the entire nation. Within weeks, Wall Street would experience a day that would change American history forever. Part 4. Black Thursday, the day panic reached Wall Street. The date was October 24th, 1929. It began like any other Thursday. The streets of New York were already crowded before sunrise. Businessmen hurried toward Wall Street. Stockbrokers entered the New York Stock Exchange with confidence. Most investors believed it would be another profitable day. No one imagined history was about to change forever. As the opening bell rang, the first wave of selling began. At first, no one seemed alarmed. Small drops in stock prices were common. But within minutes, the selling became heavier. Then heavier still. Stocks that had been rising for years suddenly began falling at breathtaking speed. Traders rushed across the exchange floor. Telephones rang without stopping. Orders poured in from every corner of the country. Sell Sell immediately. Sell everything. Panic spread faster than anyone could control. People pushed through the crowded trading floor. Clerks struggled to keep up with the endless stream of orders. The ticker machines, which printed stock prices, could no longer keep up. They fell hours behind. Investors no longer knew how much their shares were worth. Outside the stock exchange, crowds gathered in the streets. Some stared silently at the building. Others desperately searched newspapers for updates. Rumors spread through New York like wildfire. The market is collapsing. People are losing everything. Fear replaced confidence. Inside the exchange, billions of dollars in value disappeared. Every minute, more investors tried to sell. But there were almost no buyers left. For the first time, people realized the endless rise of the stock market might actually be over. Around midday, America's most powerful bankers held an emergency meeting. They knew if the panic continued, the entire financial system could collapse. One of the country's leading bankers stepped forward. Large banks agreed to buy huge amounts of stock. Not because they believed the prices were fair, but because they wanted to restore confidence. The news spread quickly. Investors paused. Selling slowed. Some stock prices even began to recover. By the end of the day, many newspapers reported that Wall Street had survived the crisis. People breathed a sigh of relief. They believed the worst was over. The government remained calm. Financial leaders encouraged Americans not to panic. Once again, hope returned. But behind the scenes, the damage had already been done. Confidence, the one thing holding the market together, had been deeply shaken. Black Thursday was not the end. It was only a warning. A warning that very few people truly understood. Because just 5 days later, on October 29, 1929, America would witness a disaster far greater than anyone could imagine. A day that history would remember forever as Black Tuesday.
Part 5. Black Tuesday. The day panic took over. The date was October 29th, 1929. Tuesday morning. Before the opening bell, thousands of investors gathered outside the New York Stock Exchange. Many had barely slept the night before. They hoped the market would recover. They prayed Black Thursday had only been a temporary scare. But as the opening bell rang, those hopes vanished. Within seconds, a massive wave of selling swept across Wall Street. People weren't selling because they wanted profits anymore. They were selling because they were terrified. Every second, thousands of shares flooded the market. There were simply no buyers. Stock prices collapsed faster than anyone had ever witnessed. Companies that had been worth millions lost huge portions of their value in just a few hours. The ticker tape machines could no longer keep up. they fell further and further behind. Investors looked at yesterday's prices, not realizing their fortunes had already disappeared. Inside the trading floor, chaos took over. Brokers shouted across the room. Telephones rang endlessly. Clerks struggled to record millions of transactions. Faces once filled with confidence now showed only fear. Some investors stood frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. Others desperately begged their brokers to sell anything, everything. Outside, crowds packed the streets of Lower Manhattan. People waited anxiously for news. Rumors spread through the city within minutes. The market is finished. The banks are collapsing. Everything is gone. Fear had replaced hope. And across America, millions were about to discover that their lives would never be the same again.
Across America, families listened to radio broadcasts in complete silence. Many had invested their life savings. Others had borrowed heavily, believing the market would continue rising forever. Now, everything they owned was disappearing. By the end of the trading day, more than 16 million shares had changed hands, a record unlike anything America had ever seen. Billions of dollars in market value had vanished. Businesses that once seemed unstoppable were suddenly fighting for survival. Banks became nervous. Loans were called in. People who had bought stocks on margin received devastating phone calls. Pay your debt immediately. Most couldn't. They had no money left. Their investments were now worth only a fraction of what they had paid. Homes were lost. Businesses failed. Dreams disappeared overnight. For millions of Americans, this wasn't just a stock market crash. It was the day their future collapsed. History would forever remember October 29th, 1929, as Black Tuesday, a single day that changed the course of the United States and the world. But the worst consequences had only just begun. Because after the crash, America entered an economic nightmare unlike anything it had ever experienced. Banks would fail. Millions would lose their jobs. Families would struggle simply to find food. The Great Depression was about to begin.
Part 6. When America Lost Hope. The morning after the crash, America woke up to a different world. The excitement, the confidence, the dream of endless prosperity had vanished. For millions of people, the nightmare had only just begun. At first, many Americans believed the economy would recover within days. Some financial experts appeared on the radio. They urged everyone to remain calm. Government officials promised everything was under control. But behind those reassuring words, the damage was spreading. Banks had invested enormous amounts of money in the stock market. Now, many of those investments were nearly worthless. Customers became frightened. They rushed to their local banks, not to deposit money, but to take it out. Long lines formed outside banks across America. People stood for hours, hoping to withdraw their life savings. But banks didn't keep everyone's money in their vaults. Most of it had already been loaned to businesses and investors. As more people demanded cash, banks began running out of money. One by one, small banks closed their doors. Some never reopened. Families who had spent years saving every dollar lost everything overnight. Their savings simply disappeared.
Businesses soon faced another problem. People had stopped spending money. Factories slowed production.
Stores sold fewer products. Companies began cutting costs. The easiest way was to fire workers. Every week, thousands lost their jobs, then tens of thousands. Soon, millions. Men who had worked for the same company for 20 years suddenly found themselves unemployed. Every morning, they walked from business to business, searching for work. Most returned home with nothing. Parents skipped meals so their children could eat. Many families sold furniture, jewelry, even treasured family heirlooms just to buy food. Across American cities, soup kitchens became crowded. Churches and charities tried to help, but the need was far greater than anyone had imagined. People who had once worn expensive suits now stood quietly in long bread lines, waiting for a single meal. Some families could no longer pay their rent. Others lost their homes. Entire neighborhoods changed forever. The American dream that had seemed so close only months earlier now felt impossible. By the early 1930s, the Great Depression had become the worst economic crisis in modern history. It affected not only the wealthy, but ordinary families, children, workers, farmers, and small business owners. No one knew how long it would last, or whether America would ever recover. The nation had survived war, but now it faced an invisible enemy, an economic collapse unlike anything the world had ever seen. And for millions of Americans, the hardest years were still ahead.
Part 7. Surviving the Great Depression. Years passed, but life did not become easier. Instead, for millions of Americans, each new day brought another struggle. The Great Depression had reached every corner of the nation. In cities, factories stood silent. Their machines no longer echoed with the sounds of production. Smoke no longer rose from factory chimneys. Businesses closed one after another. Store windows that once displayed beautiful products now stood empty. Across America, unemployment continued to rise. By 1933, nearly 1 out of every 4 American workers had no job. More than 12 million people were unemployed. Every morning, thousands walked the streets, searching for work. Many carried the same question: does anyone need a worker today? Most returned home, without hope, without money, without answers. Families who had once lived comfortably now depended on charities, churches, soup kitchens, and food donations. Long bread lines stretched for blocks. People waited patiently for hours just to receive a bowl of soup or a piece of bread. Parents often skipped meals so their children could eat. Children wore the same clothes day after day. Some stopped going to school because they needed to help their families survive. In the countryside, life was no better. Farmers faced another disaster. A terrible drought struck the Great Plains. Strong winds carried away dry soil. Massive dust storms covered entire towns.
the skies turned dark, even in the middle of the day. This tragedy became known as the Dust Bowl. Thousands of farming families abandoned their homes. They packed everything they owned into old trucks and traveled west, searching for a better life. Many believed California offered hope, but when they arrived, jobs were scarce. Life remained difficult. Meanwhile, public frustration continued to grow. Many Americans blamed President Herbert Hoover. They believed the government had not done enough. People wanted change. They wanted leadership. They wanted hope. Then, in 1933, a new president entered the White House. His name was Franklin D. Roosevelt. In his very first speech, he told the American people, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Those words inspired millions. Roosevelt introduced a series of programs known as the New Deal. The government created jobs, built roads, bridges, schools, and public buildings. Banks were reorganized. New laws were introduced. Slowly, very slowly, confidence began to return. America was still suffering, but for the first time in years, people believed the future could be brighter. The Great Depression had changed the nation forever, and its lessons would shape America's economy for generations.
Part 8. The Lessons That Changed America. The darkest years did not last forever. Slowly, America began to recover. New factories reopened. Businesses returned. Families found work once again. But the country was no longer the same. The Wall Street crash of 1929 had changed America forever. Millions of people had learned a painful lesson. They discovered that wealth built only on hope could disappear overnight. The government also learned from its mistakes. For years, the stock market had operated with very few rules. Banks invested recklessly. Investors borrowed enormous amounts of money, and almost no one was watching. That would never happen again. New banking laws were introduced. Strict financial regulations were created. The government established the Securities and Exchange Commission, known as the SEC. Its mission was simple: protect investors, prevent fraud, and make the stock market fairer. Banks were separated from risky investment activities. Companies were required to provide honest financial information. Confidence slowly returned. The economy began to rebuild. But for millions who had lived through the Great Depression, the memories never disappeared. Parents taught their children to save money, to avoid unnecessary debt, and never to believe that easy wealth lasts forever.
The crash reshaped not only America, but the global economy. Countries around the world watched America's collapse. Many experienced economic hardship of their own. The effects reached far beyond Wall Street. Historians still study the events of 1929. Economists continue to analyze its causes. Governments use its lessons to prevent similar financial disasters. Even today, whenever financial markets become overheated, experts remember one date: October 29, 1929. Black Tuesday. A single day that changed history. Nearly a century has passed. The skyscrapers of Wall Street still stand. The New York Stock Exchange remains one of the world's most powerful financial centers. But hidden within those streets lives the memory of a generation who watched fortunes disappear, dreams collapse, and a nation fight its way back from one of the greatest economic disasters in history. The story of the Wall Street crash is not only about money, it is about hope, fear, greed, resilience, and the strength of ordinary people who refuse to give up. History leaves us with one final lesson. Markets may rise, markets may fall, but wisdom, preparation, and patience will always be more valuable than blind optimism. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most important events in American history. If you enjoyed this documentary, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with others who love history. Until next time, take care.